am absolutely honored and delighted to have Badri Matlock, spiritual teacher, advisor, and writer, as my guest today. Welcome to my podcast.
Thank you so much. So nice to be with you.
And so nice to be with you as well. So, I would like to ask you, how would you describe yourself? Who are you really?
Yes, what an interesting and enticing question. Well, in simple terms, as you said, I can be described as a spiritual teacher and leader within the Ananda work where I serve and live. I can also be described accurately as a father, as a husband, as various things of this nature with my regard to my family and my work and so forth. But to get right to the heart of the matter, spiritually speaking, I would describe myself as a soul and more than that, a part of spirit. And because my own spiritual search has led me to follow true guru, a Sat Guru, I would above all define myself, as it were, as a disciple of a great master. And I believe that is the greatest, again, to use the word definition, that we can give ourselves, is that we are a soul in relationship to spirit. And if we are blessed to be a follower, a student, a disciple of a great master, then that is a tradition and a definition, again, that is very sacred and important.
That's really beautiful. Thank you very much. And what really quickly caught my attention that you have said that we are part of the soul is part of spirit. What exactly did you mean by that?
Yes, I think it's a fundamental and important concept that,
Mhm.
spiritually speaking, again, every human life, and in fact, all of life, is sacred. In essence, it is divine, and that human beings in particular have an ability to awaken and experience that awakening consciously. And so the soul, therefore, is gradually becoming aware in that awakening process of its oneness with spirit. And so that, in simple terms, is the process of awakening, is realizing the unity of the individual spark of the divine that is each soul in creation, in human experience, and the infinite spirit or God.
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. And I feel from my own experience, when I look at my own awakening journey and awakening journey of other people, there is this certain amnesia that people have really truly forgotten who they are. And that leads me really to my next question about subconscious mind, because as you're aware yourself and I'm aware myself, is that majority of people are operating on only 5% of consciousness, and that
Yeah.
majority 95% is something that we have forgotten. And I'm kind of tapping into this subconscious and feeling into it, how much of our soul is actually trapped in that subconscious mind, and how can people access the subconscious to aid the healing, in your view?
Yes, this is another important and really profound topic. And let me just back up a little bit with regard to the subconscious mind and say that, and even preface that to say that everything I share comes from my understanding through my guru Paramahansa Yogananda and through my own experience of meditation and prayer and spiritual practice following Kriya Yoga teachings and practices. And the idea that we have this subconscious, mind and consciousness. 5% would perhaps be generous to say,
Mhm.
in terms of our awakening, but that also importantly, we have other aspects, namely our
Mhm.
conscious mind and our superconscious mind. And I'll come back to that, but to reference this higher nature as we were discussing of spirit, that is part of our consciousness as well. And again, just before we get to the subconscious, let's consider the conscious mind. Okay, this is the part of ourselves that we use to function every day in the world. Not always, perhaps, or to a greater or lesser degree, but nonetheless, as we tie our shoes and brush our teeth and go about our daily activities, we're using the conscious mind, again, to a greater or lesser degree. And it is true that there is a part of ourselves, this subconscious mind, which is like an enormous data storage bank, we could say, where all of our thoughts and experiences, the past, thoughts about the present and the future are all dwelling in this enormous, hard drive of our consciousness. And so the subconscious mind has tremendous influence over the conscious mind and over our present reality. And it is true that it is a sort of spiritual amnesia, that we are forgetful, therefore, of our superconscious mind, of our higher self in spirit. And so I would say that between these two aspects of ourselves, conscious and subconscious, kind of on the horizon line, is this superconscious spiritual mind or consciousness. And this is where, through the process of spiritual awakening, which is not only some, fantastical, far out spiritual process, but is very practical, as we apply ourselves diligently to spiritual practices like meditation, like having proper attitudes of the mind and of the heart, that we develop more and more the consciousness to transcend all of our subconscious habits and thought patterns in order to attain more of the superconscious awareness.
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible, and I really need to follow up on this one
Mm.
and really kind of quickly tap into reprogramming the subconscious mind.
Mm.
And I feel if our subconscious is operating and leading our lives, then we don't really have much control of our life, to be honest. So our
Mm.
reality is created by a subconscious. If you're not aware of what is in our subconscious, then who is actually leading this life?
Yeah.
So my go
Well, I would absolutely agree with that. The subconscious mind, again, state we are talking about, is very limited, and it has a tremendous power, I agree, over us. And so the key is, do we work to change it by using the same tools that put us there in the first place, or do we access something higher? And so, yes, we're getting into the practical discussion of what are the ways that we can actually work with this and change this reality to transcend to something higher. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. And that is to actually go into our subconscious mind, as you've said beautifully, through various spiritual practices or really any practices that people are finding that are comfortable with them. It does not have to be necessarily branded as spiritual, because it will
Correct.
put lots of people off actually going into the subconscious mind. But it can be anything. It can be journaling, it can be walking in nature, it can be just kind of being a little bit inquisitive about what is actually going on and why am I experiencing this reality that's around me, as if it's on some kind of cycle of going around and around, same record playing again and again and again.
Yeah.
And I feel for us to actually reprogram on some level, we need to know what is actually in that subconscious mind in the first place, and then release it. And then, as you say, through this higher realms of consciousness, to let these higher realms of consciousness drop into your subconscious and to reprogram, so we can maybe experience divinity and experience unity and connection with everything there is.
Yes, I would agree with that, and just make one small caveat or point that, again, this is a tremendous storage bank, to use that analogy, of all of our past thoughts and actions, far greater and more vast than we can even possibly realize. And so I would only say that to work with it in a limited capacity, but certainly to be in nature, to practice simple things like kindness, compassion, gratitude. These are very powerful tools that will help to transform our consciousness, including the subconscious mind. But more powerful is to work in active ways, conscious and powerful, intentional ways to change the subconscious mind. And it will not be necessary to access and understand every corner. It won't be possible, in fact, to understand and access every corner of the subconscious mind, but that gradually attuning ourselves with higher states of consciousness, again, through
Yeah,
tools and techniques and practices, that we can attune ourselves with, again, and with these divine qualities, again, whether we label them spiritually or not, that will therefore transmute and transform those lower states without, again, necessarily having to access or understand, every wrinkle in the subconscious mind.
yeah, that's really, yeah, absolutely fantastic. That goes really, really, really deep. And Badri, as you have said, I mean, it, subconscious is so deep, it will be maybe a little bit egoic to say that we have capacity really in this human body to actually understand the vastness and the depthness of it and the power of it as well, and how we can really use our subconscious mind to transcend really and to create incredibly beautiful creations into a 3D to help humanity raise their consciousness collectively. I think that's really beautiful. And you said one of the tools is meditation. So if you're willing, maybe just to give our audience a little taster uh, of your meditative practice and how can we relax and deep into our
By all
subconscious.
means, yes. Let me share with you just briefly, and for all those who may be joining us, just a couple of techniques to help us to relax and to attune ourselves to spirit. Again, as I've been saying, with a practical and powerful technique. So please sit upright with me and let's just relax the body. Just take a deep breath in through the nose and let's dive right into the applied science and art of yoga, of experiencing the soul's oneness with spirit. So take another deep breath through the nose. Breathe out through the nose. Sit with the spine straight and the body relaxed. And feel with your gaze behind closed eyes that as you look directly in front of you, you are experiencing again the conscious self, the conscious mind and awareness. And as well, as you direct your gaze downwards behind closed eyes, feel you're symbolically looking down into the subconscious mind, into the subconscious self or consciousness. And now finally, as you direct your gaze upwards, just slightly to the point between the eyebrows, feel as if you're gazing, again behind closed eyes, at a distant mountain peak. And as you settle into just a gentle rhythm of breathing through the nose, continue to relax into stillness and feel an uplifting awareness into the superconscious mind, into the realm of spirit. And as we meditate for just a few minutes together in silence, use this simple mantra of the mind: I am peace. Because peace is an aspect of spirit, of the higher self. And we'll use this along with the breathing so that when you inhale, you mentally say, I am. And when you exhale, peace. I am peace. Continue with the gaze gently lifted to the point between the eyebrows. And we'll meditate for just 2 or 3 minutes in stillness and silence, using this mantra to attune to the higher superconscious state. I am peace. Let's meditate now. Let's continue meditating for just a few moments longer. Continue to focus at the point between the eyebrows and feel this mantra, I am peace. As we close our meditation, try to feel and visualize the consciousness of peace spreading through your mind, the conscious and subconscious permeated with peace, your body, your life, and all of your relationships and circumstances filled with divine peace from your own superconscious awareness, from spirit. Om. Peace. Amen. So I hope that this simple, brief meditation gives some glimpse into this awareness of the superconscious self and how we can access, as a tool to raise our consciousness and experience a divine quality such as peace.
That was, Badri, absolutely fantastic. Even though it was, thank you so much. Even though it lasted just couple of minutes, I feel as if I have gone somewhere and come back,
Hmm.
into this new environment that's more peaceful and more divine, I would say, even.
Hmm.
As if there was a shift in consciousness.
Yes. Yeah, there is a profound universe of awareness within. And for those that are so inclined to explore and to awaken this, again, it does not have to have the labels of God and spirituality, although that can be helpful or appropriate. But we have access to this higher self within, and there's untold opportunity and awareness that can be awakened there. Yeah.
That was really beautiful. I really really noticed actually shift in
Hmm.
consciousness, not in me but around me, in this environment that
Yeah.
actually I am in. It's such a profound sensation that it's really difficult to explain. So I would urge anyone to actually try this a couple of more times and just kind of deeply connect. It was truly beautiful.
Yes, absolutely. And yes, I believe really that having a regular meditation practice, a bit longer than this perhaps, but doesn't have to be hours and hours. If we can do this for 5 or gradually 10 or 15 minutes every single day, every morning, if possible, every evening. I believe this is the greatest single commitment that we can make to change our consciousness and our awareness. Of course, there are other important tools and aspects, we can discuss and consider, but I believe this is the single most important thing we can do to raise and change our own consciousness for the better and that of the world around us as well.
Absolutely. So before we jump into ego
Hmm.
section of this interview, which I feel is going to be really interesting, is that I wanted to ask you why are we focusing in the area between our eyebrows? Why that
Yeah,
area?
yes, this is an interesting question and point as well. That scientifically speaking, we have executive function here at this prefrontal cortex or place in the brain. Our limbic system and more of you could call our animal tendencies are in the limbic system in the more of the back of the brain. And of course, it's not to say this is good, this is bad, or anything of this nature, but that we have this spiritual and scientific awareness hardwired within ourselves. As I said earlier, the human being is uniquely adapted in terms of having the most advanced, not only physical nervous system of all creation, but that the human consciousness has the ability spiritually as well in our energy nervous system, you could say, to awaken. And so in yoga, we call this sometimes the chakras, the energy centers in the body. And there are other traditions and other ways of explaining or understanding, but really they are just words and ways to describe the inner experience that if we close the eyes, and focus our attention in these higher centers, such as the heart center and this point between the eyebrows center, that we can experience these higher states of consciousness that exist within us. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thank you so much. And I know from my own practice, when I, let's say, connect, if I sit in meditation, I connect to my heart center.
Hmm.
Sometimes I would feel it spiraling,
Yes.
spiraling or getting really, really hot. I
Hmm.
don't really necessarily have to sit in meditation. That's the thing. Sometimes it will happen. I will drive a car and suddenly I will experience heart chakra getting really, really, really hot, or
Hmm.
something will happen. Usually when I'm driving, things will happen.
Hmm. Hmm.
But like when I'm perhaps maybe a little bit on an autopilot, or when I'm in kind of this kind of zone and unity consciousness, then things will open
Hmm.
um, spontaneously, so
Hmm.
to speak. The unity will happen, or this kind of profound experience, as if I know everybody. And
Hmm.
then this question, how come they don't recognize me, And I would
Yeah.
say to myself, Anna, stop staring at people, like, but I'm looking at them because I see myself in them.
Yes, beautiful. Yeah, I believe that awakening, as we're describing and discussing it, it is not a linear process,
Mm,
although we have these progressive stages of awakening, both in our lives and again in our physical and energy body. It is not always point A to point B, so to speak. And so it's true that we may feel at times what seems like a spontaneous awakening of this feeling, for example, of unity or a profound sense of peace that comes over us. And it may be connected to meditation practice or being in some beautiful experience in nature, or it may be seemingly disconnected and come at other times. And again, this relates back to the subconscious mind and to these many parts of ourselves that we don't always understand, but that spiritually speaking, we have access to, we have within us. And so we can work with them as they arise and understand that even if we do not fully understand them, that this is all part of this gradual process of awakening to higher states of awareness and consciousness. Yeah.
wonderful, because I'm thinking with 5% of consciousness and with conceptual thinking, we can't possibly understand that
Yeah.
deeply. So maybe sometimes it's more, instead of understanding, maybe it's about allowing without understanding.
Yes. And
I
I
don't
would
know.
even add one more layer to that, which I agree. Again, how can with to use this analogy number again, how can with 5%, how can we understand 95%, right? We have a limited instrument. But more so than even allowing, which is important to have the openness of our heart, of our spirit, to let whatever comes to us, to let it come and accept it. And I would take it one step further. If we can bring some positive energy, such as joy or such as love, again, these are divine qualities where we say, not only can I accept something, but I can love. I can experience happiness and joy and bring some positive quality to it. Then we really feel, if we're being authentic, that again, we are growing spiritually or in this process of awareness, awakening.
I'm super interested in this, because now we are tapping into this phenomena of duality, and
Yeah.
in that duality that we're going to be covering further down the line is we have a choice. We do have a
Yeah.
choice in any
Very
moment.
good.
What are we choosing? Are we choosing, as you beautifully said? I love it, and I'm going to remember it. What am I bringing into this situation? It's not just
Yeah.
taking; it's what am I bringing?
Yeah.
What am I bringing joy? Am I bringing love, or am I bringing fear, anger, resentment? It's my
Yeah.
choice. It's duality. If I have a choice to opt for fear, but then surely in duality I have choice to opt for love as well. What is it going
Yeah.
to be?
Beautiful said. Yes, absolutely. We have a choice, and gradually we become more aware and we try to make the right choice best we can. Yeah.
Fantastic. Should we dive deep into ego right now?
Yes, by all
Yeah.
means. Yes. Yeah.
What is, in your opinion, what is the ego?
Yes. Again, what a wonderful and interesting topic we have because ego, this word, it has the Greek origin of what is our sense of self, and it is a good context or framework for understanding who we are, because in a very basic sense, the ego is just a bundle of our self definitions, who and what we think we are, accurate or not. As I said before, I can honestly say I'm a father and husband and spiritual teacher and disciple and all these things. And this is effectively, not to color it as good or bad, this is the ego, this identification with the sense of self. Yeah.
And in your opinion, why does ego needs identification?
Yes, why does it need identification? I wouldn't say so much that it needs it, that as much as that it is sort of built into this, as we were saying earlier, experience of duality and sense of self in the world, that without ego, there would be no individual expression of spirit in the human form, for
I
example.
see.
And so ego gives us something to work with, an instrument
Mm,
that I call myself, in this physical body with these emotions and all of, we've been saying, subconscious and conscious self. This is kind of the shell, this is the
mhm.
vehicle, which we call ego, that we can work with. Yeah.
Aha, aha. This is really interesting actually concept, because in my experience, I mean, I love my ego.
Mm,
Even if my ego, because now I want to kind of separate this ego and ego that's healthy, that
mm,
he is a healthy construct to help us identify yourself into this 3D reality, because in other realities we don't need identification at all. We just need it here while we are in this body. So to
yeah.
have certain identification so we can describe ourselves to people makes sense to me. But
Yes.
we also have unhealed ego, the ego that's telling us, to majority of people, that's telling us that perhaps we are not worthy, or
Mm,
that we are not good enough, or that we should play small, that we should people please, that
mm,
we shouldn't be asking for that promotion, because who are we to ask? We are not worthy of it. So how
mm.
do we transcend that ego? How do we make unhealed ego back into this healthy ego that we actually need here?
Yeah, beautiful. Well, now we are into the heart of the matter, and really, this is the entire work of all of the spiritual, path and understanding and awakening. That is, how do we transcend ego consciousness? Not good, not bad, not, simply this is who I am, but to say I am something far much more in spirit. And how do I get there? Again, knowing it is not linear. How do I get from point A to point B? And there's a little story I'll tell you first, just that illustrates this, of a man who was traveling in a part of the world he wasn't used to. This is in the United States. He's in the countryside, and he's visiting a place he's looking for on a country road he's never been before, and he gets a bit lost. Okay, so he decides to stop and ask for directions. And he stops and asks a farmer who's out working in his garden. And he says, "Excuse me, sir, do you know how to get to such and such a place I'm looking for?" And the farmer says, "Well, yeah, I can tell you how to get there. You need to just go over that bridge that you crossed and then take a left turn." And he says, "No, actually, that won't work." He says, "Keep going on this road, okay, that we're on now. Go a little further and you'll see a big barn. And then you take a left turn. And then and he says, "No, actually, that won't work either." And then the farmer scratches his chin a little bit and he says, "You know, you can't get there from here." And this is a colloquial example of how we, again, with this limited instrument, we cannot get there in terms of spirit, in terms of our higher self and consciousness, ego transcendence. How can we get there with the ego? Right? We're trapped in a sort of catch-22 situation where we cannot get there from here, like the poor lost person. So, in fact, ego transcendence requires, again, that we acknowledge some higher power. We can call this spirit, we can call this God, we can call this guru if we are fortunate to have a guru, which I know we may talk about as well. And
Yes.
so, ego transcendence is essentially two ways we can simplify it. And both are valid. And again, this is not only linear, but essentially we can expand our consciousness, okay, our sense of self. As we've been saying already, through meditation and practices, we can expand who we are and our awareness so that I feel, as you said, that other people are a part of me. Okay, if I am harmful to others or to nature, to creatures, then I am harmful to my own self. I can feel compassion and kindness for these things. I can meditate and use these tools of awareness to expand my consciousness beyond this little body and mind and self. Okay, this is one way of expansion. The other way we can go is by shrinking the ego, we can say, until it is almost nothing. Okay, we can use the word humility to describe this, where I say, in my own self, I am not important. Okay. If someone does something or says something that is harmful or offensive to me, if circumstances in my life are such that I don't feel supported or like I am important, I can accept that. And again, can I bring love? Can I bring joy to this situation, to this person, to this experience? So you see, this is the way of humility, of self transcendence that says, I am not important. You know, Saint John of the Cross was a great mystical saint in Christianity who said, if you would seek to become everything, then become nothing. So,
Mhm.
through this practice of nothingness, of
Mhm.
humility, of no ego, we can also transcend. And again, both are valid and can be, used co- together, cooperatively, in this path of ego transcendence. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. And so that leads me to another question, but I think you already answered it. But
Mhm.
just if you want to add something, how to use ego really to use ego as a vehicle to help um, s- to help us in a spiritual awakening.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, again, ego is the tool we have to work with. So make no mistake, the ego is our both our friend and at times our foe, but we need to acknowledge and work with who we are and our strengths and develop um, a healthy ego. You know, you can say this in order to transcend that very ego. So again, it's a bit of a paradox, but it's an
Yeah.
important framework of understanding and, again, spiritually speaking, that we work with the ego that we are given, that we have to work with in such a way to transcend, as I say, both through this expansion of our awareness and consciousness, and also through this withdrawal of our sense of self to be as if nothing, so that we can be everything. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. So, in that sense, what is actually a healthy ego?
Yeah, what is a healthy ego? I would say that we've used the word awareness, is key because, again, we can say a healthy ego means I have a strong sense of self. I am confident. I have, perhaps I'm successful. Perhaps I'm, a powerful person. And in a way, this is a healthy ego. But in the context of what we are saying spiritually, in the process of awakening, we have to ask ourselves, what is the goal? Okay, what is the
Yeah.
objective? And spiritually, the objective is to unite soul with spirit, as we've been saying with regard to meditation and other practices on the path of awakening. And so then the question becomes, is it healthy for my ego to be a powerful, successful person? And I mean this genuinely. Perhaps it is. Perhaps you're someone who is insecure and lacks confidence and needs to develop this part of themselves.
Yes.
But, however, if you're very strong in these qualities already and you perpetuate this powerful, strong, confident persona, now perhaps this ego, this very same thing which is helpful to one, is not helpful to another spiritually on the path of awakening. Perhaps suddenly it is harmful to others or self if I continue in this example of this powerful, confident self. And so, spiritually, to have a healthy ego is appropriate to what is right for you. And that is why I use the word awareness, because it is somewhat neutral to say, is this appropriate for me spiritually? Does this fulfill me? Will this bring me happiness and peace? Because it may not be the same for you as it will for me in terms of the circumstances. But again, the goal is the same, that we are all seeking happiness, peace, union of soul with spirit. And a healthy ego is that which helps us to attain that. Yeah.
That's really interesting. That's profound.
Mhm.
But this is a gem,
Yeah.
because I think what you have just said right now is the key, really, that would that can help lots and lots of people literally unlock their path towards freedom.
Hmm.
And it's about, instead of being upset with ego, that I see a lot on social media, that people want to kill the ego. I'm thinking,
Yeah.
no, you don't want to kill the ego, because ego is actually you. So if
Yeah.
you're telling your ego, please die, you're telling to yourself, please die, please die.
Yeah.
So I don't agree with it, but to actually, the way you describe it, to use the ego as a tool, it's like an archetype, to use
Hmm.
it, to understand it,
Hmm.
uh, and to use it to guide us towards a freedom. It's beautiful, and I
Hmm.
feel it's so powerful to see it in that light, in that sense. And I can see how individual it actually is. So we are using ego archetypes in different ways, depending, as you said, do we feel like kind of small and not very confident, and we can kind of maybe embrace this archetype of ego, or persona that's confident and needs to step forward, because to stay small and shrink is not going to bring us happiness and joy and peace and freedom. I think that's beautiful,
Yeah,
Audrey.
yeah,
That's a
I
gem.
agree. This is the heart of the spiritual path, and
Mm,
so a very important topic to understand, not only
yeah,
with the mind, but with the heart.
yes,
Because we've
exactly.
been saying, what is right for one is not always right for another. But if we can develop the awareness of our heart, of our higher self, of our mind, then we can understand what is right for you, what is right for me in any given circumstance, through that developed tool of awareness. Yeah.
Mm, that's beautiful. That's really, really beautiful.
Mhm.
I'm just going to ask one question on this one
Mm.
before we move
Mhm.
on. Is that I've noticed and I noticed in my awakening journey many, many years back, that it took me a while to switch from conceptual kind of knowing to this deep, deep inner knowing, really.
Mm.
So,
Mhm.
if you were to give advice to someone who is stuck in their mental energy and they find it difficult to embody this wisdom,
Mm.
what advice would you give them? How to embody it?
Yes, how to embody and draw deeply this wisdom. You know, my own path is, as I said, a Kriya Yoga teaching and lineage. And yoga is a universal path from India, from the East, which is really about the applied understanding and experience. I would use the word experience to say that, again, it is not enough to understand something mentally. To read spiritual books and listen to spiritual things is wonderful if it helps us to understand. But as you say, ultimately it must be embodied. And so I believe the path of yoga and meditation gives us direct experience of these realities which we seek to understand. So we need to develop both the mind and the heart through these applied teachings. But again, I would stress the need for a daily practice of some kind. I've used the example of meditation, and there are certainly others. But if we are not touching into that experience daily, let's say just regularly, with our sincere heart, then we are not embodying. So to have a practical teaching that we apply, that we experience directly. And again, I would say to use the divine quality of love as an example, that if we are not generating and developing a sense of love and harmony, peace and compassion, then we're not applying, we're not embodying the wisdom which we seek to understand with only the mind. Yeah.
I see. So it is. all in, not all, in practice, in daily practice and dedication to
Mm.
ourselves and to our soul and to our spirit and to our ego as well, and see
Yeah.
really all parts of ourselves as really a tool, I would say. I had
Yes.
a I had experience once when I was asleep,
Mm.
and when I was working on my ego. I never saw ego as my enemy, even though it did give me lots of it did challenge me, that's for sure.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I was fast asleep, and then this voice woke me up that shouted in my ear, and the voice said, "Ego is not your enemy,"
Mm.
you know. And it
Mm.
woke me up. It was 4 o'clock in the morning, and I quickly wrote it down. And I was meditating on it and kind of feeling really into it, and understanding that ego is ego is here to help me awaken. It's going to annoy me. Of course, it's going
Mm.
to annoy me because I'm not aligned with my purpose. So by annoying me and causing me pain and suffering, it's trying to align me, with joy and happiness. I wouldn't be experiencing all this. So in that sense, it's a friend. I see it as a friend, really.
I agree. It's a friend and a tool that we can use to experience and to grow, into our own higher self, higher awareness. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, let's go to next question.
Very good.
Why are people scared of death?
Ah, yes. And, I think that this actually ties very interesting into the concept of ego. Okay. Because let's consider if I am identified, again, the definition of ego, if my sense of self and definition is tied to this body, what happens when I die? When this form is injured or perishes? Okay, and that's the big existential question, of course, on Earth and this experience. And so, this is the root of all of our fear and insecurity, is that I'm going to lose this self, everything that I've acquired,
Right.
my physical possessions, my qualities, my personality, my relationships. Don't get me wrong, these are all very dear and important things, each in their own way. And so, this whole bundle, as I say, of self definitions, of possessions, of ownership, of sense of self, this is the most terrifying thing of all to most people, is what will happen when it is all stripped away from me. And so this is why death is extremely fearful and insecure for many, many people. Yeah.
And how can people actually free themselves from that fear? Is it to kind of work on non-attachment? Because in
Mm,
my the way I see things is that the the fear of death comes with attachments, even attachment to this body, and suddenly, we know that we cannot hold on to this body forever and ever and ever, and we know on mental level that body needs to dissolve. But yet
yeah.
still, so many people in our society, especially in Western society, have this fear of letting go of this body, and there is such a big
Mm,
taboo around death. And
mm,
even, like, if you let's say if I go to hospital and want to see a dead body, I'll get arrested. It's like
mm,
real hidden. It's hidden.
mm,
It's taboo.
yeah.
And why do you think that is? Why is Western society so fearful of looking really into it? Is it like this collective ego consciousness that's fearful?
Yeah, again, a very interesting question. Two parts or to unpack, because first, again, it will come as no surprise that I think that really the way out of this attachment and this fear of death is a way through, right? Ultimately, we all must die. But how can we can say in a way, how can we prepare for death? Okay. Whether it comes tomorrow or it comes in 50 years or none of us really knows, how can I prepare for that experience? Okay. Not by writing a will and by doing these things that make arrangements, which may be very practical and important to do, but again, in terms of my spirit, in terms of my awareness now and how I live my life, how can I prepare for that experience? And again, it will come as no surprise that I think the tools of meditation, the tools of awakening that we're talking about, in a way, they're practice. Okay, they're practice for dying, not in a morbid sense. As you say, there is a taboo. But what is death? I simply take my last breath, my heart beats, and it's done. Okay, nothing happens one moment to the next. If you have been with a dying person before, I have. One moment they're there, next moment they're gone. Okay, where did they go? We can discuss that too. But I would say that, again, the spiritual practices and tools, if we're doing them correctly, again, in this applied, embodied wisdom way, we are saying we're actively preparing for that moment of death. So that gradually the attachment is definitely a big one. The other one I would say is desire. These things that keep us bound in this world, in this body, in this experience, suddenly they are not quite so powerful. And if I have been sincere and dedicated in my life every day, of course, being a good husband or worker or wife or whatever the ego, again, whatever those definitions are, that we need to play our part well. But also, if I'm developing this greater and greater sense of awareness, of freedom, then when death comes, it's like a puff of smoke. Okay, it's just a freedom, it's just a cloud sailing off into the sky in freedom. And I have prepared for that in my life, so that my desires, my attachments, my fears are not weighing me down in this heavy and fearful and anxious way, but I'm prepared for the moment of my death. Yeah.
That's really profoundly beautiful, because I think I totally agree that that is the key. It's in the practice of kind of accepting, really, consciously and deeply within us, that we don't own anything,
Mhm.
that we don't have anything. Not even these words that are coming out are not mine. I was telling someone the other day, I was in nature, and I was picking up some. I went in nature with intention to pick up some plums and apples to see what nature wants to gift me, Mother Nature. So she gifted me apples and plums by the river, and I know
Mm,
there's a little mouse there, because I will go swim to swim, and there's a little mouse zooming left and right. And I
mm,
thought to myself, I'm gonna pick a couple of plums
mm,
to give to that mouse and to give to Mother Nature as
mm,
well. And then it just struck me, that awareness, and I started giggling.
mm,
This awareness struck me that not even this, I can't even give anything, because
mm.
nothing is mine. You
Yeah,
know, I
yeah,
can't even. It's Mother Nature. It's consciousness using me to be this kind of delivery driver of the consciousness, to pick
yes.
up plums and then to deliver it to another lovely creation,
Yeah.
which is little mouse. And it struck me, I have nothing,
Mm,
nothing. But in that moment, I realized, through that nothingness, I have everything.
yes. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, and again, this is the higher reality. Again, we may have some glimpse of it, but who is giving, who is receiving, and what is there to give? Okay, if we are all one. Now, again, on a practical level, we need to go to work and pay our bills and serve our family and responsibilities of the world. So we are very much bound day to day in this idea that we have to achieve, we have to reach these objectives, we have to fulfill these obligations. But if we can develop and maintain the greater sense, that spirit, that this greater awareness and consciousness is the only reality, more and more we find ourselves in the flow of abundance, of greater awareness, of fulfillment, of everything we need. Because, yes, spirit ultimately is there playing all of the parts. And I just want to go back and touch on something you said, kind of culturally, again, back to the idea of death, that it is, taboo, which is very true in many cultures and in the world we live. It gets into a much broader and very interesting discussion of the spiritual awareness, not individually, so to speak, but collectively, of our planet and of this age that we live in. And so we are in an era, a time of raising awareness from a relatively lower consciousness in this planet to a relatively higher state. However, we are still, for all intents and purposes, at an overall lower stage. And so we see this in the world largely playing out in terms of greed, in terms of, seeking power, in terms of, selfishness and all the things that are happening in the world today, violence and suffering and on and on and on. And we think to ourselves, why? Why is all of this necessary? Why is this permitted? And it simply has to do with, as we were saying, the individual subconscious. Again, in yoga, we use the word karma to define cause and effect relationship of the world. And so the karma of this world that we go in, of Mother Nature, of all the people on this planet, is in a relatively low state of consciousness. And although it is gradually awakening, we have these fears and these anxieties of things really like death, which again is this fundamental human fear, but also, again, of pain, of suffering, of sorrow, these very real seeming realities in this world. And the process of awakening, as I said, it is not linear and it is not happening overnight. So we have to go through some of the growing pains of awareness, not only individually but collectively, to overcome things such as fear of death, such as pain and suffering and sorrow, which we are seeing, everywhere. And we want to feel, of course, compassion and understanding for. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's maybe a little bit of a remembrance there as well, because how I see it, if we can remember ourselves through our
Mhm.
body, I feel we can only remember ourselves actually through our body, as you've said. We feel pain, and through that pain, we are kind of awaken a little bit more, and we chip on this kind of unhealed ego, and then we experience something else, and a little bit of pain, and then we awaken a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit
Mm.
more,
Yeah.
till we actually, I feel, till we start remembering who we truly are. And with that remembrance comes confidence.
Mm.
And through that confidence, we realize, well, I can't die. What was
Mm.
I even scared of all the time? You look back and you
Yeah.
realize that you are just scared of illusions,
Yeah.
something that doesn't even exist.
Yes. Yeah. No, I very much agree that gradually we have nothing to fear and that we feel increasing this sense of joy, this sense of peace, that instead of, as I said, with the subconscious mind trying to understand every anxiety, every attachment, every fear, that gradually it is simply replaced with calm acceptance, with joy, with this greater wisdom through that path of experience of awakening.
Thank you so much. And just because you opened the door, so I have to ask you,
Mhm.
because you said you've sat with someone who has transitioned.
Mm,
Where do
mhm.
we go?
Yes, again, the question of where we go after death, once again, is an existential and, very old question that we ask ourselves. And if we relate back to ego, once again, is it true to say that when we die, that's the end? There's no more ego, there's nothing left. Well, I think none of us can definitively say. It's part of the mystery of life from our own experience. But also, as we're preparing for death, as I was saying earlier, we begin to get a glimpse of these higher realities. And we become convinced gradually, even if I do not understand ultimately what is death, what happens, where do we go, where are my loved ones when they pass away, we do develop something we could call intuition and a greater understanding and awareness that there is something more beyond this physical form, beyond this mind, and this limited ego. And so, spiritually speaking, when we die, when we shed this physical form, it's like taking off some clothes. Okay, the
Mm.
spirit goes into a spirit world, again, to put in simple terms. And so this spirit world is far more vast. It's non-physical. It's not a location somewhere else. It is outside of this physical realm. And we can experience it even now in a limited way
Sure.
from this world. But in that world, it is pure energy, pure spirit that we're tapped into. And so our loved ones, their soul, and even to a degree their ego, is still there in that world. They're carrying the memory of those experiences of earthly life. We can pray to them, we can talk to them, we can communicate with them, as it were, through the medium of our worlds. And it's just like a veil. behind this physical world that we go to, that our loved ones go to, after this so-called, experience of death. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and life as well. So I'd like to ask you, um, can we experience humanity? Can we be in this human body and experience enlightenment at the same time? Is it actually even possible?
Yes, absolutely. We can
Oh,
experience enlightenment in the human body. As we've been saying, it's a gradual process of awakening. Throughout human history, there have been many examples across different religious and spiritual and cultural traditions all over the world of individuals who have experienced this awakening, this enlightenment. So we know it is possible through their example and through our experience. Again, if we apply ourselves diligently and sincerely to the practices,
mhm,
we'll begin to gradually experience
mhm,
that process of awakening and to know its potential, even if it takes time, even if it, as I say, is gradual. We'll begin to have direct experience of its
mhm.
potential.
Thank you so much. Because I've noticed that many people are actually believing that once they experience, let's say, awakening or unity or enlightenment, that's it. Suddenly their
Hmm.
life is just going to change completely. They're going to be happy and joyful for the rest of their lives. And then when they're not, then I've noticed that doubt creeps in and they're questioning really their divinity, or is this awakening
Hmm.
really awakening or was it something else? Uh,
Yeah.
so it's a question, as you've said so many times beautifully, it's a question of practicing, really.
Yeah. And we could ask also, is this like some light switch that I turn on and suddenly I'm awakened? Again, or is this a gradual process of awakening? And do I fully understand it? Again, with this example of 5 or 95% through my limited instrument, what does it mean to be awakened? And so if it is a gradual process, then let me be open to how it unfolds. Again, let me not say, it should look like this or should look like that. Okay, if we look at some of the awakened individuals through history, whether they're cultural or spiritual icons, saints or figures such as Mahatma Gandhi or perhaps Martin Luther King, in these different forms and expressions, they may have undergone tremendous suffering and pain in their own life. And
Mhm.
does that mean that spiritual awakening must necessarily cause pain and suffering? Well, it may, but who's to say it's just joy, as you say, and peace and love, and I'm just happy all the time? So again, we are subject to the duality, to the karma, to the experiences of this world in a human body, even as we are going through this process of
Mhm,
spiritual awakening.
mhm. And you lead me beautifully to your next question. What is duality and why do we need duality?
Yes. Again, a very good question. Well, in simple terms, we've been talking about enlightenment. Light switch is on or off. Okay. It's either light or it's dark. It's either happy or it's sorrow. It's either pain or it's pleasure. We are all familiar with this aspect of duality in both the physical world, but we could say, the emotional world and psychological world, that we live in a world, a universe of energy. When we look at the planets in outer space, and when we look at the most beautiful little mouse by the river and all these forms of creation, that there's a dual aspect of life and death, of big and small, of, again, feeling love and perhaps its absence, if not hate, but to acknowledge that there's this reality within myself and the world around me that is dual, that is always, swinging one side and the other. Today I'm happy, tomorrow I'm sad. Someone says something nice about me, someone says something unkind, and on and on and on it goes. And so again, the process of awakening is the way through. How do I transcend this duality? How do I awaken myself so that I can be not subject to the constant ups and downs of
Mhm.
this world, but that
Yes.
I can have the divine qualities of calmness, of peace. True divine peace has no opposite, it has no dual. Okay, true divine love, it has no opposite or dual. And so we're aspiring to those qualities of unity which transcend this world of duality.
Mhm, mhm. Wow. That's incredible. Because in Buddhism, they have something as middle way. So
Mm.
as you said, rather than having those spikes, which are really we can compare them to addiction. It's exactly the
Mm.
same. We have joy,
Mm-hmm.
we spike, we are high, and then something happens, and then we are in this kind of low frequency, and it can cause such a mayhem in our energetic field. But it can also cause addiction. People are not aware, so we can
Yeah.
become addicted to duality, really.
Yeah.
So to try, yeah, go on.
Yes, no, just to say, I think you're absolutely right. And to use the example of like the middle path in Buddhism is important because we take some simple example like sugar. People take some sugar in some form, they want more of it. Okay,
Yes,
this is a physiological response of the body, again, of our brains. And we
yes,
can use any number of other examples. But to say, I take some little bit of sugar, I want more of it.
yeah.
I want more of it. And the middle path, the way of developing moderation and control, doesn't say sugar is bad or
Mhm.
indulging in is bad, but let me be aware and let me exercise some form of self control, of discipline, so that I am not subject to good, to bad, to sugar, to only to healthy eating. I never touch any sugar. I don't mean to use diet as an
Mhm.
example to
Yeah, yeah.
to go too far, but just to say that we can experience, let us say, the pleasures of this world consciously with the awareness of spirit without overindulging the senses. Again, to use that example, by exercising discipline, by exercising balance and moderation, we can transcend, again, the dual nature, not being subject to all of its ups and downs, but we can experience it and go through life with that calm, even minded awareness and joy.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We can. We don't need to go to extremes and really kind of trick ourselves that we need to punish ourselves somehow. We need to be good at two shoes and always say the right word, and God forbid saying something bad. And no, we can be everything. It's like this kind of radical acceptance of self. We can experience everything in as you said, in moderation, with awareness and in consciousness, rather than going to this unconscious mind and scroll Instagram, for three
Hmm.
hours, and after 3 hours, oh my gosh, where was I for 3 hours?
Right,
So
right.
yeah, that's really important and comes with the practice as well. And I feel also what's really important maybe to mention is forgiveness. So even if we do fall into those traps, not to punish ourselves with certain thoughts, but to forgive ourselves really, really quickly, and just say, okay, I've been unconscious for 3 hours. Okay, I'm
Hmm.
conscious now, and I'm gonna try again. I'm gonna try again. I
Yes.
love myself anyway.
I'm so glad you brought this up because also it was on my mind just as we're talking, this very same thing that we can be sure we will make the mistake. Okay. Again, to use the sugar or Instagram example, it's no question that we will fall into that trap. We have before, we are now to some extent, and we will again. And the question becomes, what will we do when it happens? How will we respond? And if we're developing this awareness, this loving, conscious awareness and acceptance, we've been saying, we've been developing and cultivating this higher consciousness of ourself, we don't have to essentially double the pain, the sorrow, the suffering by taking it on ourselves and saying, why did I do this? I'm a bad person. Why did I say that? I feel terrible that I took in that food or whatever it may be. We can forgive ourselves, as you say, we can accept it and we can do better going forward. We have that choice, that intention, that possibility and potential. And so the question just becomes, how will we respond? We are not our mistakes. We are not our shortcomings, but we are responsible and have the power to transcend them if we really put the sincere effort and dedication.
Mhm, mhm. And I feel that's one of the reasons we were given duality. So we can
Hmm.
exercise our free will, and we can exercise our choice, and we can
Yeah.
actually learn through duality that we have the power, that we can have a control of our lives, and choosing every moment. Are we choosing love? Are we choosing fear? How we are actually treating ourselves in every moment, and how we are treating everything that is in existence. And I think it's such a blessing for us to have duality as a tool, to exercise this beautiful gift that we were given, which is gift of free will and the gift of choice. So let's move on a little bit from that one. And I would really, really love to ask you, because in this time, lots of people are really searching for gurus. They're searching really for way out. They're searching for some kind of wisdom and knowledge. And I know at the beginning, it's important for people to connect with gurus. Further down the line, we realize that we are our own gurus. We have this innate wisdom that's available to everybody. But we do need certain gurus at certain stages of our life to kind of really help us elevate our consciousness. So I would like to ask you, what is let's say, one main reason for connecting with guru? And also, I'm also aware, and we have to be honest and real about it, that there are lots of so-called spiritual teachers and gurus out there that don't really have people's awakening at the best interest. It's not in the best interest and in the heart. So what are the what is the importance of having guru, and what are
Yes.
the red flags people should be aware of when
Yeah.
connecting?
Excellent. Good. Yeah. Well, I would say again, coming back again and again to this limited instrument, if I want to learn the piano, I need a good teacher. If I want to climb a mountain, I need a guide. Okay. I want to become great in business. I need to work with or associate with someone or some people that can help me with this. So spiritually, it is no different that I need to keep the company of those who are spiritually evolved if I want to advance. I cannot lift myself up by my own bootstraps, so to speak. And the guru represents the epitome, the pinnacle of that, one who is fully awakened and therefore can help to awaken myself, okay, and others. So that is the need for the guru ultimately, is that we come to a teacher, we come to a fully awakened true guru, as you say, one who is fully enlightened, who can help us on our own path to enlightenment. And by the same token, to the other point of your question, yes, there are many who, through their ill will or otherwise, perhaps good intentions, but misguided, who would seek to awaken or instruct, or guide others, but who lack sufficient awareness of their own. And so it's not maybe for us to understand their motives, but as you say, what are the red flags, And we can develop our own sense of discrimination and awareness, perhaps, that says this person or this, maybe group of individuals, but to use the idea of the guru, has my best interest in mind. First, are they pure of heart in their own actions and words? Okay, whether they are alive, or perhaps if someone says, Jesus Christ is my guru, is my master that I follow. Do I believe and do I connect with the spirit of this person that is pure, that can give me a feeling of my own higher self? And then, to quote the words of Jesus, who I believe was a mystical saint and guru in his own right, although that may be misunderstood in some traditions, by your fruits, he said, by their fruits you shall know them. And so, what are the fruits of, following a given path or a given guru? Am I experiencing gradually developing true joy and peace and awareness? Is this who I want to be after following this path or these techniques or this guru? Do I see others that are following? Do I see a genuine happiness and peace and kindness in others, that I want to be like? Or is that, again, by your fruits you shall know them? Is that not something that I feel is inspiring or uplifting or what I want to emulate or become? So, in a practical way, we can look for those things, those fruits that show us, is this a true path? Is this a true guru that can take me where I wish to go?
There's something that's coming. I know we're running a little bit out, over time, so but I do apologize a little bit. It's such an interesting subject.
Yeah.
But now that you were talking, something came to my mind. Lots of people who are seeking gurus, who are seeking spiritual awakening, are coming from traumatic lives, traumatic, let's say, childhood. They don't
Mm,
necessarily have the capacity uh, to recognize the truth, so to speak, in a person.
mm,
So we
mm,
have the situation, let's say, of cults where people do genuinely feel that they are following certain path. They're feeling happy. There are other people
mm,
who are feeling happy, etc. But when you look deep down, beneath, it's a
mm,
cult that's using and manipulating people. So
mm,
that's something that I've been observing quite a lot. So how can a
mm,
person who, let's say, has gone through traumatic experiences, doesn't have a self-confidence, and it's not in touch with their divine feminine, with that innate wisdom, how can they actually recognize who true guru is?
mm. Yeah, it's a difficult question, I think, because again, if we're being honest, n- every one of us has traumatic experience,
Mhm.
okay, whether this life or some other, you know, none of us are exempt from the pain and suffering of this world. So I believe we are all carrying, again, as we've talked about, the karma, the subconscious, experience patterns, pains of the past. And so every one of us is working with that limited instrument. But it's said that when the disciple, the student, the soul is ready, that the guru comes.
Yeah.
And so maybe it is important that we not be seeking and grasping to find the guru,
Point.
but that we are willing to accept, to surrender, to be open to the guru coming to us. And
Mm, yeah.
remember too, it doesn't come always in the guru,
Mm,
who looks like a guru with long hair and robe and,
uh-huh.
touches us in blessing. But the guru can come to us through books, can come to us through friends. The guru can come to us through uplifting spirit experience and nature, as we've been saying, or any different way that we're open to it. Ultimately, I believe it must come through an enlightened soul, a certain form. But again, when the disciple is ready, the guru comes. Okay, not when the guru is ready, the disciple comes. So I think we focus on our own development and awakening, and be very weary of following, seeking. I
Mm,
think that is the cult mindset that says if we all follow, if we all, seek like this, if we all band together. No, let's develop our own individual spirit of awakening, of discrimination, of love, peace, and joy. And then let us be ready and open to how spirit, through the guru may come.
that's just so beautiful. I absolutely love it. And
Mhm.
that's what it is. Instead of seeking, and giving ourselves away, to cultivate joy, love, and peace practice. And as you say, to open ourselves for the guru to come. And it can come through animals, I feel. It can come through
Yeah,
plants or a
everything.
tree.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful.
Wonderful. So to finish it off, I would like to ask you, in your experience, what are the, let's go with one reason, because I don't want to take too much of your time. What is the one reason in your experience that people are coming uh, to where you teach, or why are people seeking spiritual communities?
Mm. Yeah, again, I think it comes back to this fundamental seeking of our own higher self. Everyone in this world is seeking to avoid suffering and pain and sorrow, as we've said. And on the other side of the coin, every soul, every person is seeking joy and peace and love and their own higher self. And so that is the primary motivation that we are all seeking, again, consciously or not. Every person on this planet, every creature, every living conscious thing is seeking that unity. And again, in human beings, it has the potential to really accelerate its awakening. So we are all seeking the higher self.
Is that the reason that you have chosen to embark on spiritual journey, or was it something else? Why did you uh,
Yes,
like?
yes, by all means. I think that, again, we can come to the gradual awakening and sort of levels of seeking. initially, I think people are just looking for some bit of peace, again, some respite from this world, whether it's suffering or sorrow or trauma or pain. And that's a perfectly reasonable and acceptable place to start, is to say, I need some comfort. I need some greater understanding. I need some peace of mind. I need to be in an environment around people, reading some books or things that help me, to attain some peace. So that's, a place to start. For myself, and I think for many others, it becomes more active. As I've said earlier,
Sure.
how can I actively seek this higher reality? What are the tools and techniques I can apply myself to diligently, to develop my superconscious awareness, my higher self? And then finally, yeah, in my own awakening, it came to, I want to seek God. In plain terms, I want to love God. I want to be one with God. It's not enough for me to have a little bit of peace of
Mm.
mind. It's not even enough for me to be successful or spiritually, awakening. And I accept my present state and the gradual process. But let me be clear about my goal. Okay, let me keep the ultimate goal in mind, the union of soul with spirit. And that is my own intention, and my life, practice and dedication is nothing less than that one goal.
Yeah, that's really, really beautiful. That's, like every day when I would wake up or go through the day, and when I would say my prayer, I would say, this is my intention, unity.
Mm,
I want to be
yeah,
free from these illusions. I want to experience myself as a unity consciousness, as source
yeah,
consciousness, not just for myself, because I know from this unity consciousness, I'll be able to serve humanity, and that's the
yeah,
ultimate goal. So it goes to experience unity, source unity consciousness. But for me personally, how can I apply it to serve humanity?
mm,
So
mm,
people can, so even if I touch one soul and they awaken and they find the freedom and they awaken somebody else,
mm.
that's a success for me personally.
Absolutely,
Oh, absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah, the soul as it is awakening, again, when you turn on a light, it casts light all around it. And so it may not be our position to be some spiritual teacher
Yeah.
instructing others or anything like this. It's not important. But a
Yes.
simple act of kindness or something that we never even know that affects others, it
Yeah.
is the very natural process of awakening that serves others. They go hand in hand.
That's
And so
beautiful.
it cannot be that I'm only seeking for myself,
Mm.
but that as I develop my own awareness and love and peace and joy, I'm sharing that with others around me just through who I am, just through perhaps in my work, my relationships, but perhaps for the best in ways I do not even know. That spirit may work through me to serve and to uplift and share divine light with others, because that is the way of the soul awakening.
That's really wonderful. So if you have now, let's say, in front of you a person who is really struggling, like someone who is watching this, who is really, really struggling, like lost, maybe in the midst of dark night of the soul, so-called dark night of the soul, or rebirth, and they really don't know what's left from right, up and down, and how to progress with their lives, and times are tough. What would you your one advice? What would you say to that person?
Hmm. I would say love. We've talked about a lot of spiritual tools and practices, and I would encourage, everyone, including someone struggling, to meditate and to develop themselves spiritually. But we all know there are times when it becomes overwhelming,
Mhm.
whether it is dark night of the soul or just some difficult circumstance of life that is crushing. This world can be cruel. It can be very painful and sorrowful. And I believe the antidote, I know it has to be love. And so I would say, whoever this person may be, to love God, to love themselves, spirit, in everyone, in everything, to love, love, love. And that is the answer, one step after another on the path of love, of awakening.
Thank you so much. And your final words to humanity.
Final words to humanity is very big, but again, I would say love. Love,
Love.
love God,
Well,
love
thank you.
spirit, and express that love in all of life. Make that the highest aspiration of yourself, of your soul, is to live on a path of love, of soul awakening, and to not be afraid, to love God and to love everyone in that spirit of awakening and sharing that divine love.
Thank you so much, and amen to that. It's just like this northern star. Northern star is love, and let's just focus on that. I had a dream when it was shown to me. Just focus on the light, like that light I have here. Focus on the light. Distractions are gonna come left and right. Just focus on the light. Focus on the love. Focus on the love. No matter what, just stick to love, like with super glue. Stick yourself, glue yourself to it, and
beautiful. Yeah. Very
well,
nice.
thank you so much. This was incredibly insightful, uplifting, and you shared selflessly such beautiful wisdom and knowledge. And I just feel so grateful, really, to your spirit, to saying yes to this, and to sharing so freely and from the heart and so beautifully. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for joining me today, and sharing yourself with the world. Thank you so much.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure to share these things and to share this time with you. And I hope that we can continue to just share this light with the world as it is meant to be. So thank you so much.
Thank
And
you. Thank you very much.
yeah.